This is AM Agenda. Thank you for your company this morning. As I mentioned at the start of the program, there's international outrage again this morning after another massacre in Syria. 78 people have been killed. Increasingly, the Kofi Annan peace plan appears to have no chance.
If things do not change, the future is likely to be one of brutal repression, massacres, sectarian violence, and even all-out civil war. All Syrians will lose.
Joining me now live from Los Angeles, I've got Syrian expert, human rights activist and columnist for the Harvard International Review, Majid Rafizadeh. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Thanks for being there. We wake to news of another massacre this morning. Do you think all-out civil war is inevitable?
Well, I think in the last 2 weeks there have actually been 4 mass killings and massacres in Syria. The Syrian regime has not allowed the United Nations investigators to monitor the situation and to gain access to these cities. I think, answering your question, I think, yes, we're getting more close to a full-fledged and all-out civil war in Syria. We have various oppositional groups who are fighting the regime. We have the regime also which is using violence against the mainstream demonstrators and the oppositional groups. And I think we reached a stalemate here, and the country is plunging into a civil war. And the reason also I'm saying this because if you look at the situation in Syria, basically there are 3 concentric forces of conflict and confrontation. One is domestic. We have the Syrian government versus the various oppositional group, and on the other hand, we have the second regional Cold War between the Iranian regime, which is supporting the Assad regime, and the GCC, or the Arab Gulf states, which they want Assad relinquish power. And then we have on a global level, we have the tug of war between Russia and United States, and that's really have made the situation in Syria so complicated to resolve it. And unfortunately, it is sad to say that the country is plunging into a civil war, and that will spill over also to the whole region.
You spoke about the various oppositional groups in Syria. That's another complexity here, isn't it? Because they're not all after they don't all share the same aims. Can you give us a sense of what the groups consist of?
Yes. The difference between the Syrian, let's say, the opposition groups and the Libyan one is that the Libyan oppositional group, they were more unified, coordinated, organized. There was a command and control system, and they were also situated inside Libya. But if you look at the opposition, and that was one reason that they were able to overthrow the Gaddafi regime. But if you look in Syria, you see the oppositional groups, basically the Free Syrian Army, let's say, and the Syrian National Council, and the other opposition group inside the country, they don't have consistency in the message that they're sending, and that has reduced the reliability on these oppositional groups. Some are welcoming foreign intervention in Syria. Some they want the regime to be removed, but some no, they want just reforms. And I think this is one of the reasons that has averted the international community to take a robust decision and to let's say, to intervene in Syria and change the political structure.
Well, it's clear that the Annan peace plan is not working. Does the international community need to seriously start considering a plan B? And what is that plan B? Is there one?
Well, first of all, I have to say that Annan's 6-point peace plan was the only plan in the town, let's say, the only game in the town, because it was the only plan that all countries, Russia, China, and the Arab countries, United States, the European countries can agree upon. So that was the only mechanism that can be used to bring all these countries together. But now we can say that it was theoretically, and whether they practically they implemented that or not, that's a different question. But I think the plan I said it earlier before, that the plan was doomed to fail from the beginning, because there were opposition groups that they didn't agree with the plan because it didn't ask the resignation of Bashar Assad, and they want him basically to be brought to justice and to the for the killings of thousands of the Syrian people. And on the other hand, I think the Syrian regime has shown in the last 15 months that no instrument had been able to persuade the regime to stop the violence. They used dialogue, they used diplomacy, they used sanctions, they suspended Syria from the Arab League, they isolated Syria, they used the different kind of mechanism, but the regime does not have any other option. The regime cannot stop with the violence, because if the regime stops the violence, that means that the people are able to come to the streets and protest, and that would be the end of the regime, that they bring the regime to its knees. So I think the only option that is left for Assad is just to use violence. And unfortunately, we're going to see more and more of these massacres in a larger number happening. And again, back to your question about Plan B, I think the Plan B would be more economic, I think, sanction they're going to use, and I think more pressure, I think diplomatic pressures they're going to use. And I think they also mentioned that if these prove to be insufficient, they're going to go to Chapter 7 of the United Nations, and that will be military intervention. But I think that's not going to happen soon.
And just finally, Majid, the UN Secretary General has he's referred to the international community needing to put its differences aside. You've alluded to that in some of your answers this morning, with Russia and China vetoing any further sanctions against Syria. That Ban Ki-moon says that the G20 next week in Mexico needs to be a place where it becomes essentially crisis talks on Syria. Do you see any sense that there will be a united voice internationally? Is there any prospect of that?
Well, it's very intriguing. I think Mr. Annan, he's using, I think he's trying to engage domestic actors, regional actors, and international actors. All of them, the opposition group, he reached out to Iran, to Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, and he is trying to bring all these actors together, because he knows that the problem will be resolved if these domestic, regional, and international actors all come together. But unfortunately, I don't see anytime soon Russia and China will change their position, because Syria is a very important country for them. I mean, if they lose Syria, basically they have lost significantly their influence in the region, in the Middle East, and access to different resources. Okay,
Majid Rafizadeh, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your insights into this ongoing and spiralling crisis in Syria. And that's all for AIM Agenda. Thank you for your company. We'll see you soon.